It is a brand new episode of Flyers Daily. How about Monday, June 16th, as we enter what is, in all fairness, the final week of the 2024-25 NHL season. The cup will be handed out. We'll see who it's handed out to and on which day that may be. But we got a ton to talk about in this episode. And he joins us every Monday. You read his work on hockeyhotstove.com. You read it on NHL.com. Matter of fact, you read it on PhiladelphiaFlyers.com as well. We welcome in right now Bill Meltzer. Bill, happy Father's Day, first and foremost. We're taping this on Sunday, so I hope you had a good Father's Day weekend.
Mine was very nice. Hope yours was as well.
It was very cool. My kids got me some Star Wars pajama bottoms with Darth Vader and stormtroopers on them, which I love.
There you
go. I still love Star Wars. And my oldest daughter came up with this idea and found this for me, a keychain, and it's very on brand. It's a Marshall amp pad,
yes.
A JCM 800, which, by the way, I had one, 100-watt head, and it holds your keychain. So you hook this to your keys.
How cool.
Quarter-inch adapter. It's got the key ring on it. When you get home, boom, you plug the keys into the amp pad. It's very cool. Very
I'm jealous. I could use one of those myself.
Yeah, big fan of the Marshall heads as well. Tons to discuss, Bill. Like I mentioned right off the hop, we're in the final week of the NHL season. Does it end in 6? Does it end in 7? Is the only question to be answered. Let's start with the Cup Final because it's going to kind of lead us to some other conversations, which specifically we'll get into with the Flyers. But I was a little surprised in watching Game 5. We know Game 5's in a 2-2 series. It may not be everything, but it's just about everything. I thought Edmonton really had a flat performance, but is that flat performance because of the way Florida smothers you as a team with the amount of support they have in all zones?
I think it is to a large extent. Also, you go back one game where they saw a 3-0 lead slip away.
That wasn't happening twice.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. I mean, they focused so much on staying on the right side of the puck and smothering Edmonton, not giving them operating space. I mean, Edmonton still managed to score a couple goals in the third period, but they were already down by 3 at that point. And then every time they scored, the Panthers would respond. But no, that was, if you would have gone into the game, and I wrote this actually on Hot Stove, and you would have told me that this will be the game Florida will not score in the power play, and Florida will generate just 19 shots of their own for the game, I thought there's a pretty good chance Edmonton's going to win this one, but it was really pretty much all Florida. I mean, starting with Marchand's goal right at the center ice face-off, and just kind of going from there. It was really another game played Florida's way, and it shows another way they can beat you too, because everybody thinks of Florida's driving the net, crashing into the goalie and whatever. They were scoring from distance. They were scoring off in transition. I mean, you can see why they're one win away from being the back-to-back champions and 3-time Eastern Conference champions now. This is a very good, very deep hockey team, and we said going into the series. I said Florida in 7. I'll stick with Florida in 7, with the difference being special teams, and Edmonton has to figure out their goaltending because they can't rely on Skinner, and they got a really good game out of Pickard in relief, but Pickard is Pickard. I mean,
you got to go back to Skinner in Game 6, don't you?
I think
do in a heartbeat. I do in a heartbeat.
I think you have to, but it's not like you have a ton of confidence in them, and
you're not feeling good no matter who you pick.
No, you're not, and if you're behind again, once again, you had to try to push the button of trying to get relief goals, and that's a hard way to win a series. So
you can't keep repeatedly go to that well. Within a 7 game, especially in a final. I mean, geez. Bill, the goal that Bennett scores in that game, I think it was the second or third goal. And he's just trailing the play. This guy's leading the league in playoff scoring, and there's nobody there to pick up the high guy. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, that's not a guy you lose in that spot. He's just sitting there. And to me, that I looked at that and said, that's an issue for Edmonton in this game. The fact that they let that happen early on, and it was really bad.
Yeah, Tkachuk's shot was blocked. But he was just cruising right down the slot with nobody to pick him up, and it was a nice shot, and and all of that. But yeah, you can't leave Bennett or really most players that wide open. But a guy with 15 playoff goals in particular,
That's insane.
So
the one of the names that's kind of been thrown about, and he's got an expiring deal. We know about Bennett's expiring deal. We'll see if he re-signs with the Panthers. I think he will, without any intimate knowledge of anything with that situation. But we've heard Ekblad's name. Now, he was drafted in Philadelphia way back in 2014. And you think about that, like that still, for some reason, only feels like 6 or 7 years ago. It's actually 11 years ago at this point. Yeah. We're going to talk about that element of it in a minute. And obviously, the top 4 players in that draft are all in this final, 3 of them with the Florida Panthers. But Ekblad's a name that I see a lot of Flyer fans throwing around on Twitter. Flyers should sign Aaron Ekblad this summer. What are your thoughts on Ekblad with the Flyers at this point, 11 now years into his career after being a first overall pick in Philadelphia?
Well, I mean, when he had that pairing with Mackenzie Weegar, they were one of the top defensive pairs in the league. Ekblad still eats a lot of minutes and whatever. He would only help a blue line. I just want to really, to me though, if you're going to sign Ekblad and defensemen too, defensemen tend to often peak a little later than forwards and decline a little later.
Yeah.
Than a lot.
The process seems slower of decay.
It does. So, I mean, he would be a big addition. I'm just curious as to what are your other moves here? Flyers have multiple things they have to address, but Ekblad would come right in. Let's just theoretically say that Ekblad did come here. Ekblad would step onto your top pair right away. Ekblad and Sanheim, I think, would be a very good pairing, as a matter of fact.
Weegar and Sanheim are a comp, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the contract comp, too, if we go back and think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously makes you better right away. I'm not against it. I don't know how likely something like that is at this time. But it's one of the things, I mentioned it in last week's pod, like I've been really taken back in every game where they introduce formally the starting lineup. I'm taken back big time because they go in Connor McDavid's 10th season in the NHL. Leon Draisaitl, 11 seasons in the NHL. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in his 14th season in the NHL. It smashes me in the head, Bill. First of all, where the hell has time gone?
Yes.
And second of all, how are these guys how is Nugent-Hopkins 14 years into a career?
It's crazy because they seem young for we always have with Claude Giroux here, right? Where it just felt like the 2010 finals, which was kind of his coming out party. It didn't feel all that long ago until suddenly it was quite a few years ago, he can see his way to 1,000 games as a Flyer. I mean, it sneaks up on you when you have a guy who's just there and playing a prominent role, and again, the player feels young to you and it's prime to you, and it sneaks up. But yeah, it's.
It shows you how long it takes to get it right.
Absolutely.
I mean, Taylor Hall's like 35 years old now.
Yeah, exactly. There's a guy. I mean, his year that he won the Hart, incidentally, Giroux should have won it that year. But be that as it may, that doesn't seem all that long ago either. But that's it's what 2017-18, so it's a number of years ago already.
Real quick before we move on, what have you thought of McDavid in these finals? He's got 7 points in the 5 games. He's a point producer, but Bill, I think he's failed to take over a game. And in particular, the last 2 games I thought was an opportunity for him to do that. I don't want to say he's come up small as a playoff performer because his numbers don't indicate that he has. But in a game and I think Gretzky's been looking for it too. If you base it kind of on his comments in pregame on the TNT panel the last couple of games, he's yet to see him grab a game, put the entire team on his back, and drag them to a win. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, like Draisaitl did that in Game 1, for example.
Yeah.
And of course, it's he stepped up. I mean, both of their overtime wins, Draisaitl's been the goal scorer. And McDavid's getting his points and he's setting up a lot of that. I think a part of it, Jason, is that is that he only has the one goal. He has a ton of assists,
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily, except in one case. There was that one just incredible deke that he made and set up a goal. But
double deke on
that was
Ekblad.
that was just McDavid at his peak, right? But he hasn't made a ton of those kind of plays in the series where he's just just wowed you, where he looked almost too good for a Stanley Cup final, just against the best competition.
Rantanen has wowed me in these playoffs more than McDavid has, and Rantanen's out.
Yeah, and Rantanen, he did that where he put the Stars on his back.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have gotten out of the first round if not for Rantanen, and the second round win over Winnipeg. I mean, he put the team on his back in that series too. So yeah, I mean, in a way, it's kind of not fair, because you go back to Eric Lindros. Or Eric Lindros, if you go back to it was the series the Flyers lost actually, but it was a series they lost to Florida. And if you go back and they're like, boy, he's put up a lot of points in that series actually.
Yeah.
Pretty much, pretty much 3/4 of the goals they scored in that series, Lindros had something to do with. But it felt at the end, well, like, okay,
he didn't do enough.
It wasn't enough, right? You expect him to just take over and dominate like he could do sometimes. Sometimes when you have a player like that, because you look at what the other absolute great players have done, right? Yeah. Lemieux.
And you remember the moments that they did great. You don't remember the moments where they've done what McDavid has done, but to come away empty.
Exactly. And I mean, and there's still one, maybe 2 games to go in the series. Again, I'm going to stick with 7 games because Edmonton's been very, very resilient.
Yeah,
and so I'll stick with Florida in 7.
But yeah, I'll take 2 more.
Utah, and at least 1 more in overtime.
Yeah. So, I'm going full Gary Busey in Point Break. Utah, give me 2.
Yeah.
Utah. 2 hot dogs.
Exactly. But anyway, I think the avenue for Edmonton to win the series is Draisaitl and or McDavid have to put the Oilers on their backs because given the goaltending issues, given their struggles to kill penalties, and they have depth beyond that, but they don't have as much depth as Florida does. That's been kind of evident in the series. So I think their superstars really have to be the guys they carry it here, and they can. I mean, they certainly with their reach.
Can't be relying on Trent Frederick or Wallman. You got to get the superstars. Got to be the catalyst. Boy, I've really liked Seth Jones too in this final. Boy, he eats up so many minutes.
Yes.
I remember talking about a couple of years ago. It was something I thought the Flyers should be interested in. I had a lot of pushback on it, but I got out of Chicago. We got into a real good situation, so we'll see where it goes for the Cup Final. Bill, let's move on. Kind of as an extension of the Cup Final. First and foremost, we've talked about McDavid being the ultimate prize. That's going to be a UFA, not after this season, but next in that class with Jack Eichel, who I think will re-sign in Vegas and won't hit the market. Kaprizov may be a different story. And last week we talked about all Russian roads lead to Kaprizov. But if the Panthers do close this out, I don't ever recall a team, not only in the NHL, but I don't really remember this in any of the major sports, that went to back-to-back finals, lost them, and then with that core group went on to win one. So history is not going to be on McDavid's side if they do fall in this series. This since expansion in the NHL, we've only seen 3 teams go to a Cup Final and then win it the following year. Panthers are one of those teams. They lost to Vegas 2 years ago, and then obviously they won it last year over Edmonton. We saw the Oilers lose, and Gretzky's talked about this quite a bit, losing to the Islanders and sitting in the locker room and realizing how much they didn't give to get it done and what it took to get it done. That was 83. They lost. They won in 84. Obviously, they won 85, 87, and then in 89, if I recall. And then the other team that has done it is Pittsburgh, who went in 09 pretty early in the Malkin.
Against Detroit, and they beat Detroit the
following year. In 09 for Crosby to win his first cup. So it's only happened 3 times.
Yeah.
This is a unique situation with the best player on the planet. If he loses this series, history doesn't say that he's ever going to win a cup if he stays in Edmonton.
It's really crazy how some of these things work. where I think there's a similar thing too, where a coach wins a cup in one city, and history shows that. I mean, with few exceptions, guys like Scotty Bowman, and, just in those few cases, but most of they remain good coaches, but they never win another cup, no matter how many other teams they coach. It's crazy how it works that way.
So hard to win a cup.
Well, it's the only thing harder than winning a cup is repeating.
Yeah,
it's champion. So, but that's I mean the history is what it is, but but there's always the exceptions too, and I don't, you would text me before this about teams that had lost back-to-back years, he said, and then winning the cup the third year. I didn't check before the expansion 67. And it might have been possible before that because you only had 6 teams in the league.
Yeah.
So that might have been done at some point, but certainly not since the expansion. I was just kind of in my head going through the.
Well, you think about it, like the Rangers had only won 1 cup in the 30 years prior to expansion. The Boston Bruins, didn't win a lot of cups prior to expansion. It was all Toronto and Montreal winning all the cups. They won like 25 of the cups leading into it. It's crazy. So I think I find it really interesting. And I mean, if history tells you that Florida can't get there next year because they probably have played too much hockey over the last 3 years.
Yes.
So you get a new representative out of the East, you get a new representative out of the West.
And I was just saying, and you look at the Chicago dynasty, the 2010s, what did they keep doing, right? They would always take a little step back, retool a little bit, and then come back stronger the year after that. It was almost like an alternating year thing for them to a degree. And I think that's how you sustain
10, 12, and 15,
window.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's the model of how a team does it. Yeah, the run that Tampa Bay had 2 cups and then a third cup final.
Yep.
That the Florida's had. It's really hard to sustain it beyond that. Just try to keep that window going. But we talked, I think, a few weeks ago about the lessons that you can learn from the teams that are having success, and we can talk all day about superstar acquisitions and top of the draft picks. You look at teams that find these players that are a little bit under the radar. We were talking about Bill Zito with it. Talking about Verhaeghe and Forsling's another one too. He was a waiver wire guy. He was a waiver wire guy, and he's been tremendous for them. You have to find some of those under the radar guys to get that depth and quality that you need to win. It takes a good bit of it takes no shortage of luck to be able to do that. But it's kind of wild.
Which brings me to the next point, Bill, and I call this in quotation marks the pivot. I've seen this notion on Flyers Twitter of late that this offseason is the Godfather referendum, I'll call it, where all family business needs to take place on the day of the christening. If you recall, Michael Corleone, I want to take care of all family business. There was hits being all over the city to get everything in order on the day of his daughter's baptism or son's. And, they took care of all family business. Well, there's this notion that, this summer the rebuild is over, and everything has to be done at once. And I think if you think that way, that's a you problem. You're an idiot for thinking that way, because if you look at every team, and I look back today at the past 25 years of Cup champions, I see these arcs and I see mistakes and then the pivot. What you do with the mistake and how you pivot to you sometimes you don't identify something as a weakness or as a hole until you get to a certain level to have it be identified. Then you have to apply the pivot. How do we take care of this to mitigate this from hurting us if we want to go to the next level? And that's what teams is. The Flyers are not going to go through this rebuild, no matter where it ends up, on this perfect trajectory where everything's taken care of this summer and they just fly. And every draft pick works and they fit in seamlessly, both from a hockey culture and fiscal standpoint, to bring you to a cup. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. We brought up Edmonton. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, the number 1 overall pick. Taylor Hall was the number 1 overall pick. So was Yakupov, but also Connor McDavid. He's now in his 11th or 10th season in the NHL, and he's just getting to back-to-back Cup finals.
Yeah.
Nugent Hopkins, first overall pick, a team that had that, and other first overall picks in his 14th year. The only team that really defies it takes a lot of time and the pivot to get there was maybe Chicago, because Chicago had a 21-year-old Patrick Kane, a 21-year-old Jonathan Taves, and a 26-year-old Duncan Keith.
Yeah, they developed. I mean, they were still at the bottom of the league at the beginning.
Yep.
When Kane came into the NHL, and that
2008 was it when he came in?
2006, 07, or 07, 08, because the Flyers got James Van Riemsdyk that year. The Flyers didn't win the lottery that year, so they got the second pick. And Edmonton, that's back when you could move up multiple spots too.
Yeah, they lost a coin flip.
Yeah, the Flyers lost out on that and got the consolation prize in that, and then things might have been very different had Patrick Kane been the pick there. So it's just is how it goes, or another sport, just another coin flip situation. The Phillies and Mets for Tom Seaver. Really, it was a coin flip. Yeah, a literal coin flip.
Literal heads or tails. Tails I win. Heads you lose. Tails I win.
So it's just, I mean, sometimes it comes down to something just like that, where it's just, there's nothing you can do about it. You just work around it as best you can. But yeah, like in team building, you're going to have missteps along the way, but you need a little bit of good luck. When Chicago made the Ellison for Patrick Sharp trade, those are two guys who need to change the scenery. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, two guys who had success at lower levels, couldn't quite crack the NHL roster, right? And so you traded two guys who who weren't getting an opportunity, and one became an NHL All-Star and one became a KHL All-Star. Unfortunately, the Flyers had their Flyers obtained the wrong one. Yeah. But it wasn't like Chicago any grand plan that they just stole Patrick Sharp. It worked out for them.
Yep.
It's just you need to make the right moves at the right times, and again, you got
to identify the problems. You have to be able to identify them and know what the solution is. That's the key, I think.
Correct. Yeah, and you might have to lose to do that. And get in the playoffs and
take it on the chin.
Take one or two on the chin. We talked a little bit about Detroit before they swept the Flyers. The year before that, they lost to Colorado. Of course, the Avalanche won the Cup their first year in Colorado after moving from Quebec.
Yep, 96.
The year before that, Detroit had the best record in the league, and they got swept, and unceremoniously swept by the Devils in the finals. The Devils just shut them down.
Yeah,
they went through that experience. They went through just a war, an absolute war of a series against Colorado. They adjusted. Then they won back-to-back cups after that. So it's you have to.
That's not an accident.
Yeah,
that is not an accident in a game that is so close. The margins when you get to this level are so thin. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we see on social media nowadays, Bill, it's in vogue with the Utes, is they love making definitive statements way before you have to make a definitive statement. This was the worst draft. The biggest mistake the Flyers ever made in taking Jetlachenko. You got to let it play out. I know people don't have patience. I mean, these are 22, 23-year-olds with no patience. Grow some freaking patience here. And that's the thing. For people's own sanity throughout this process, don't develop hardline opinions right away. It's going to take time. The Flyers rebuild, if in 3 years from now they get knocked out in the first round, it doesn't mean it's a failure. It may be a pivot moment that leads to success. Yeah. But everybody wants to make these definitive statements and say, I was the first one to make it. And it just makes the whole experience of conversing with these definitives painful to me.
Yeah, I think that you also have to compare apples to apples too.
Agreed.
If you're drafting a forward and you didn't draft, or you drafted a defenseman, you didn't draft a forward, you have to compare him to not so much to the forward maybe you bypassed, but who are the other defensemen who you considered there, and how did and what were you looking to do at that time too? I mean, the Flyers try to go by the best available player route, Now, everybody says that, but some teams are a little bit more position-oriented than others. And maybe if things are close, you look at the position. But it's so hard, too, because when you're putting a team together, you really have to look at the total picture. That's when we were talking a little bit the other week about player size. I think you can win with a few smaller players, and individually they're just fine. And I think you can see that for a lot of guys. A lot of guys are good NHL players in the right situation, but maybe not the right guy for the role you need him to play on your team.
Paul Kariya was successful because he wasn't the only. There wasn't a lot of players of his stature.
Yeah, in that time, right? And that's exactly, and and a team can also be a little, you maybe have size, but maybe you don't have enough speed. Maybe you are a slow team.
Yeah,
so you really need that balance. And just to go back one last time to those Detroit teams, which is easier to do in the pre-cap age, I understand. What made those Detroit teams from the mid-'90s so impossible to beat when they finally got through was they had guys who could match up against any team in the league because they had their smash mouth, their power guys, right? Like Brendan Shanahan, LaPointe was Konstantinov,
Hardy,
big mean, right?
Yeah,
but they had the Russian five on those teams. So they had Yzerman, they had the finesse, they had the nasty guys, they had the size and the speed. They had the defensemen who depending on the team and matchup you're playing. Are you going with Lidstrom, Larry Murphy, or are you going to go with Fetisov and Konstantinov? I mean, it was an embarrassment of riches. Oh. But no matter what your team identity was, they had guys who could match up with you. And
one of the best matchup coaches of all time.
Oh yeah, well that certainly having Scotty Bowman played a big part of that too. And if you remember going to that final too, they thought Konstantinov was going to play against the Lindros line, and he didn't. I mean, Bowman shook that up, and it was actually I think it was Murphy and Lidstrom. I think was the pairing that played against them the most, and they had success. But it's just I honestly think that. Just prepare for as many different kind of teams you're going to encounter as best as you can to match up against different kind of lineups. Those are, to me, the teams that are the hardest to beat because they might have fewer weaknesses in there too. So as you're building, you really have to look at what a guy's role is, what benefits he brings to you, and what purpose he serves.
Let's talk about purpose of a player. One of the things we've seen out there this past week, I think it was Nick Kyprios who first reported it, that talks in Ottawa have stalled a little bit between former Flyer captain Claude Giroux and the Ottawa Senators. He's obviously an unrestricted free agent after spending 3 years in Ottawa, a little bit of time in Florida, obviously after the trade. But Claude Giroux now available, and I'm seeing some of the beating of the drum. He's the perfect guy to bring back to Philadelphia at this point in his career. He can be a little bridge to another C, can kill some penalties, still has some game left, take a pretty team-friendly deal. You and I reside in the same camp, Bill, and I think for very similar reasons. You and I were big Claude Giroux supporters when he was here.
For sure.
And I think he does still have something left to give to the game. But I think one of the things that you do if you bring him back here is you take a chainsaw to the legs of a young leadership group. A lot of those guys that played here when he was here, that by bringing him in, even if he's like, I don't need to have a letter on my jersey, even you can say all those things, doesn't matter. His presence cuts the legs off those. You can, to me, it is as foolish as it comes to bring him back here.
I don't think he fits. I don't think he fits the timetable, and B, I don't think he fits the mix is where they need to get it to.
They had to change the culture. There was a culture problem here when he was here, frankly.
Yes, exactly, and not blaming it on him because he was a very good leader by example. I mean, he was ultra competitive in practice, always ready to play, etc. And while people sometimes said, well, he underachieved in the playoffs. Well, he underachieved in the playoffs except when he didn't, because he had some big playoff runs in there too.
Yeah.
When
he had help.
Yeah. 2010 through 2012, he had several really good playoff runs.
Yep.
But at any rate, so with 100% respect for him, like his 1,000 games here, his 900 points, all of those things. He brought a lot to this franchise, but I don't see him as part of what they need to do moving forward. And when we talk about the need for a frontline center at this point, how did the Flyers prolong his,
move him to the wing?
His problem, they moved him to the wing, right? And
he can take some faceoffs for you, but he's not a center anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, he's still one of the best faceoff guys in the NHL.
Number one this year, by the way. over 58%.
Yeah. Now a lot of those are on his strong side. He really doesn't take weak side draws so much anymore. But he can move. He can move to center for you if you need him to. But really, he is a winger at this point. And we talked too about the just the mix of size and speed and whatever. The Flyers are a little bit on the small side, and he's a guy who always, he more than compensated for it. But I just don't see it fitting either. What you need in the room, what you need on the ice. To me, it's a nostalgia trip at this point for him. Yeah. And I think for everybody's sake, including G's, I'd like to see him go somewhere where he has a chance to win a cup. Just as somebody would
go to Colorado, Dallas.
It's a good spot for him.
Yeah,
these are good spots for him where he has a chance to win. Play another couple years, take another kick at the can or two. Because if he stays here, or comes back here rather. Maybe gets the Flyers into a playoff. Helps them get there, but he's not going to get them that final step, which is really, I think, the last piece of his career that he has. The biggest thing for him to accomplish it at this point, because he was a Hart finals one year, should have been a finalist. It still galls me, and I think he should have won it that other year.
For a decade, he was the fourth leading scorer in entire NHL.
Yeah, exactly. And look at his all-time. Well, obviously his all-time franchise ranking, but just in terms of his impact on a power play and just all the many things that Claude Giroux brought. So it's not any kind of diss on the player. It's just that I just don't think it's the right fit to bring him in at this point. If what you really needed was a power play specialist who could, provide a little bit of leadership. You have a really, you have a group that's veterans. He can come in, maybe not but you're not. What you're trying to do is you're trying to have a younger group take hold together and to kind of rise into those leadership roles. This is an opportunity for guys to do that. And whether people like it or they don't like it, if Claude Giroux is in your mix, he has to be part of your leadership group and a key part.
Yeah,
you don't go from being as central as he was to the team to playing just a secondary role.
Just being a guy that shows up and skates his wing. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. So I don't. While I understand the sentiment, I just don't see the fit.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's well said. You don't bring back the longest tenured captain in team history and then not ask him to lead. And by doing that, you would be cutting off the legs of a lot of young guys. Bill, one last thing. We'll kind of focus a little bit more on the draft next week. We've heard some chatter about Marco Rossi or about some other players, obviously Shabanov and others. We haven't heard any conjecture, rumors, smoke when it comes to Flyers and attachment to any goaltending. And I have a theory. And my theory is this. Why have we not heard about that? Because I think when the Flyers are serious about something, we don't hear about it. Yeah. Go back to the Cutter-Gauthier deal. The Provorov deal. In the first week of Danny, when he first took over, it wasn't even named the Provorov complicated deal that he pulled off. Nobody saw coming. Obviously, Cutter. Yeah. We didn't see, Mishkov coming over and playing air hockey or bubble hockey or whatever at the Flyer. When they want to go dark, Keith Jones, Danny Briere, and the Flyers front office can go dark. And when an obvious need for the team that we all know they need to upgrade, and I think they've admitted they need to upgrade the situation, to not hear anything to me says a lot.
For sure. And it's something Jonesy himself has said. that when you hear all this chatter and all these rumors, more often than not, it won't happen. Now, sometimes it does, but more often than not, it won't. It's when you hear nothing, when it's silent, there's actually something brewing. Yeah. And sometimes teams put out the smoke signals too. We'll talk more about the draft next time. But you mentioned Michkov, and there are a lot of scouts from other teams that thought the Flyers were going for Ryan Leonard, who nice prospect in his own right. Yep. From what I heard afterwards, obviously Michkov was their guy. If he was there for it, they weren't positive he was going to get to 7. He wasn't going to. They weren't sure about number 5. Yeah, but
they thought Leonard was the perfect Flyer.
Yeah, and he very well might have been. I mean, I like the player too. But what I heard afterwards with the smoke signals of they love Leonard. Boy, he's a born Flyer. It turned out from what I heard afterwards was Dalibor Dvorsky was actually their second choice.
Yeah.
So you hear the one thing and this is their guy, and they've really been working on something else, and it often works that way where they'll let you believe what you want, but they're working on whatever they're doing. And you said when it's quiet and you don't hear a peep, that's when you look for something to happen.
I get excited, because I think Danny Briere and Keith Jones have this ability to work under the cover of darkness. You know what I mean? In a very clandestine way. Why do I say that? Because we've seen it. Yeah. I look back at recent history and I let it judge sometimes. And we all know that need and an admitted need of the front office. And for it to be as just crickets as it has been in regards to, I mean, it's the easiest, laziest narrative for national media in the world, too. Flyers goaltending. It's like a layup of all layups.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been boo about it.
Yeah.
Something's going on. We'll see. It just gets me excited because I'm getting excited about what's coming over the next couple of weeks.
Well, when you go into a draft with 3 first rounders,
seriously,
4 second rounders, so you have 7 picks in the top 50.
Yeah,
right.
Drop in.
Something's going to go on with that because you don't really need all those picks. You're not going to make all of them, so you're gonna move some assets around, whether it's an NHL roster trade, whether you're moving up for somebody. I guess the least sexy of the 3 is you're just diversifying assets over a couple drafts, but there's value in that too. But something is going to go on, and and I think obviously the fun stuff would be either an NHL roster move or moving up for someone. So
remember, it doesn't all have to be done. The Godfather on the day of the christening. But I think you got a general manager and a president of hockey operations that got some stones too and ready to go.
They do.
So we're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to reading Bill's stuff on PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and of course on the brand new HockeyHotStove.com. We'll be back Wednesday as we inch closer. Maybe the cup will be handed out Tuesday night. We shall see. Also, Danny Briere going to join us. He has an availability on Tuesday. He'll be our guest coming up on Wednesday's episode. Join us then on a brand new Flyers Daily.